Sometimes you might hear uh, someone referring to a player as a team milking the opposition for a penalty. Sometimes it's not the most above board approach that they take, but there are ways in which you can really force the hand of the defenders and get penalties. And two of the situations where this happens most often is at scrum time and during the rucks. Sadly, in many ways, scrums have lost some of their potency as an attacking platform for teams, and defenders defend really well against it for the most part. There are still ways in which you can score really effectively from a scrum, especially if it's in the center of the field, but that's a whole different discussion. There are, however, other benefits to scrums that must never be overlooked. Scrums have become a great way to actually earn penalties in the game, and that is part of why the glorious big guys, the props, are as popular as they are in Europe. They are some of the most sought after players for clubs, and there's some big money going to the really impressive big boys. A while ago, I heard one commentator actually referring to Frans Malherbe as the goose that lays scrum penalty golden eggs. Though this is true of France, it can actually be said of a couple of other top props in the world. Scrums are hotly contested these days, with 800 to 900 kilograms of forwards from both sides fighting it out as a well-coordinated team. This arm wrestle is always a way of asserting dominance, and the teams that dominate the scrums are usually the ones who actually dominate the opposition forward pack in many of the other phases as well. So it's got that kind of a mental aspect to it in a big way. Scrums, however, really become a very effective way of putting the pressure on oppositions, keeping that pressure on them, and especially when teams are defending in their own half. Sometimes it leads to these instances where a scrum penalty comes out of it, and there are chances to kick at goal or put up a line out very close to the goal line. Rucks are, however, a little bit more technical, and they are very above the board and very sneaky ways to actually get penalties from rucks. But we're going to look at the less dodgy side of rucks just for this video. The best way to actually get a penalty from a ruck is just through sheer patience. If you are actually able to keep your concentration, set up multiple phases, the pressure actually builds up for the defensive team. More often than not, the defenders will become more and more anxious and more impatient, and they will try and do things to turn over the ball. This often results in them actually going offside at the ruck, falling over the ball, contesting when they're not supposed to, and that usually just comes from pure frustration. So if you're patient, you can play that waiting game, you will actually earn penalties. Ireland are some of the best at this in the world, and one of the great examples that they also had where they didn't earn a penalty, but where rucks was a major factor is a few years ago in the Six Nations, they put up 42 phases through rucks, just through 20 odd meters to get into a position where they could put the drop goal up and win the game against France. So rucks actually has a very important role to play. Might not be spectacular to the casual observer, but that is one of the most beautiful tools in a war of attrition when you're in the rugby game.